Morning.
Good
Morning. Good morning.
Okay, let's get started. Okay, gewaltig. Today is actually the orchard of the Shidna Veruv. I think his name was Cheskel, because he wrote the Divrei Cheskel. And the Shidna Veruv was a Yid who was known for the Midas HaEmes. Every word he said was true, and because of that, when he gave someone a bracha, it came true as well. So there's a famous story with the Strapke Veruv, who was a Holocaust survivor, and he was saved through a Michal Ber Weisswandel. And what happened was that Michal Ber was able to find a way to save 23 Yidden, who I believe were escaping from Germany. And he had figured out that there was some type of truck that was driving through the German towns that was headed for the Swiss border. And he estimated that he can fit 23 people hidden on that truck. And the plan was that as they got close to the border, the stowaways on the truck would jump off the truck, and then they would walk the border. And he arranged for them fake German passports, and they would be able to get through the border into Switzerland, and then they would reach relative safety. So one of the people who he included in the 23 people was the Strapke Veruv, and as he was briefing them right before they were starting, he asked them, "Do you all speak fluent German?" And the Strapke Veruv said no. So he said, "Then I can't let you go, because by the border, when you show you German papers, if you're not going to speak a fluent German, not only are you risking your own life, you're also going to be risking the life of the other 22 people that you're with. I cannot let you go." So Strapke Veruv said, "If you let me go, I take personal responsibility for everyone on this escape." So Michal Ber said, "That's not good enough for me. If you give it to me in writing, if you give me a star with your handwriting that says you accept personal responsibility, then I will let you be on this group of 23 people." And indeed, that's what the Strapke Veruv did. And what happened was, when they got to the border, just as the border guard started to question them, there was an air raid. It was either American bombers or Russian bombers, but bombers flew overhead. The entire border staff scattered, and they were able to just stroll right into Switzerland. So after the war, Michal Ber met the Strapke Veruv, and he asked him, "How did you pull that off? Like, how could you possibly have been so sure that you were going to survive and take such a risk?" So he said, "When I was a little boy, I was by my grandfather, who was the Divrei Cheskel, the Shidna Veruv, and I was coughing. And the Shidna Veruv told me, 'You're coughing now, you have time to cough when you're in your 80s. So to me, that was a haftacha that I would live into my 80s. And therefore, I knew with certainty that I would get through this.'" And it was known that whatever the Divrei Cheskel said, whatever the Shidna Veruv said, it always came true. Okay, I think we're going to set up shot by the parsha of Nedarim, Lo Yachel Devarai, was if a person is makbid to keep his words, then his words will become kodesh, and anything he says will in fact become true. Okay, so we ended off yesterday discussing the three opinions, the opinion of Rav, of Shmuel, and of Rabbi Yochanan, as to what it takes to be mevatel chametz. Rav was the most stringent, who said that chametz bismanai, chametz on Pesach itself, where geyser she'enei minoi atu minoi, and even min b'she'enei minoi will be osher b'mashu, and chametz after Pesach, so it's only chametz after Pesach, where there's no isur kares, and Rabbis passing like Rabbi Yehuda, where there's an isur lav and not an isur kares, you'll say min b'minoi batel, min b'she'enei minoi is batel, and min b'minoi will be osher b'mashu. That was Rav Shita. Shmuel Shita was a little bit more lenient. He said you don't make a gzeira of min b'she'enei minoi atu min b'minoi. So therefore, chametz b'Pesach, where there's an isur kares, min b'she'enei minoi is batel b'shishim, and min b'minoi would not be batel. But chametz after Pesach, Shmuel holds like Rab Shimon, who holds that there's no doraisa at all. There's no doraisa at all for chametz after Pesach, and therefore taruvas chametz after Pesach will be mutter and ganzen even if you don't have shishim. And then Rabbi Yochanan, who was the most lenient, who holds b'chol kula min b'minoi is bottle. Therefore, he said that even chametz on Pesach is bottle, both if it's min b'minoi or if it's min b'sheina minoi. And chametz after Pesach, he also holds like Reb Shimon that there's no doiraisa. And since there's no doiraisa, any type of taruvas chametz after Pesach will be mutter. Those were the three shittas, and now the Gemara is going to tell us psak halacha. So Omar Rava, Zokt Rava, Hilchasa, halacha lemaisa, chametz bizmanoi, bein b'minoi, bein shaloi b'minoi, osher b'mashu karav. So the first thing that Rava is doing is he's passing like Rav, that chametz on Pesach is osher b'mashu, which is what we hold as well. We hold that chametz on Pesach is not bottle. But shaloi b'zmanoi, once Pesach is over and you have chametz over Pesach, then bein b'minoi, bein shaloi b'minoi mutter. Why? Because Reb Shimon, because we pass him like Reb Shimon. So let's see Rashi how he understands the psak of Rava. Rashi says, Shma mina, the pasak Rava hilchasa, the chol yisurin shebetoira b'minon b'mashu. From the fact that Rava paskins like Rav, it must be that min b'mino is loy bottle, and we're geyser on Pesach, where there's a curse on the chametz, we're geyser min b'sheina minoi atu min b'minoi, and therefore every type of mixture will be osher b'mashu. But the main yesod is that Rashi is pointing out is that b'chol atar kula, by any other yisurim, Rav seems to pass like Rav that min b'minoi is not bottle. V'loishani lon bin chametz l'shar isurim. Ela b'hol milsa, the only chumrah that exists by chametz that doesn't apply l'chol atar kula is the gazer shalai b'minon atu minon. Here, we're geyser by chametz. We're geyser even if it's min b'she'ein minoi, it will also not be bottle b'shishim. But l'chol atar kula by min b'minoi would also not be bottle b'shishim. So shma mina chelev shenafel akter, which would be min b'minoi, oyser b'mashu, even a mashu would answer because l'chol atar kula Rav is paskin with Rav that min b'minoi is not bottle. V'chein halacha, that is halacha. But the kaimelon kol yisurin shebetoir b'shishim, that we have this common knowledge that anything that's bottle b'shishim is bottle, is b'shaloi b'minanu. That's speaking b'shaloi b'minan. Tosfos in this lengthy Tosfos actually disagrees, and Tosfos learns that the chumrah, even of min b'minoi, Rav is not paskening like Rav b'chol atar kula. Rav is just paskening by Pesach, the chumrah Pesach only there. But b'chol atar kula could be min b'minoi, would be bottle b'shishim. So that's one of the big shots in the Rishonim. B'chol atar kula is min b'minoi bottle or not. So Zok the Gemara. So by chametz b'zmano he's passing like Rav that min b'minoi is not bottle and min b'sheina minoi we're geyser atu min b'minoi. But shaloi b'zmano, once you have chametz after Pesach, bein b'minoi bet shaloi b'minoi mutter. So there he's not passing like Rav. Rav said it would be aser. He passes it's mutter Reb Shimon because Rav is passing halacha l'maaseh like Reb Shimon, and Reb Shimon holds that there's a lav to eat chametz on Pesach itself, but there's no lav to eat chametz after Pesach. And therefore, chametz that was mixed. Omi Omar Rava, did Rava say that? Well, Omar Rava, Rab Shimon Knas HaKanis, Hoil over love, B'Bali Rabbi Matzeh. Sure, Rab Shimon held that there's no deraisa, there's no lav to eat chametz over love of Pesach, but there's an Isur D'Rabbanan on it. So why do you say that if it's mixed into something else, if it's taruvitz, it's going to be mutter and ganzen? So because that's how Rab Shimon that's how Rab Shimon understood the takana. Hanimila be'ene, that it is a takana to asher chametz over of a Pesach. That's if you actually have in front of you the chametz over of a Pesach. Of idei taruvitz, but if it's mixed, loy. So the gzeir d'Rabbanan al tzeknas to asher chametz over of a Pesach is only when the chametz is be'en. Want it in the mixture, even if it's not batal b'shishim. The fact that it's in a mixture, they never the knas does not apply to that. Zok Rashi, not only if it was mixed on Pesach, so even when it became usher, it was mixed. But even if you had a piece of bread, so the Bal Yirah was a real Bal Yirah on a real piece of bread, was ben. Well, and you were over a proper Bal Yirah, still loy kanis lemesa terubas delay. If after Pesach this bread, which is 100% usher, got mixed into something else, the knas wouldn't apply to that. So that's how Rava paskins. And Rava, what Rava is paskening in an academic setting is actually how he paskins practically. The Amar Rava, Yavina Beir of Nachman, when we were by Rav Nachman's place, Yavanaf Yeshiva Yomi de Pesach, by the 7th day of Pesach, by the end of the 7th day of Pesach, Amar Lon, he told us, Puku Uzavina Chamir Devnei Chela. You have soldiers who live by you, and they were goyim, and they had chametz on Pesach, and he told us that we can go sell them, meaning it wouldn't be asher b'anoah. We're allowed to sell it. So you see clearly that there wasn't an issur d'oraisa, it was only an issur d'rabbanan, and therefore, since it belonged to goy, there was no issur on it, and you could sell it and have a no from it. So one of the shalos that they ask is, this occurred in Bavel. Rav Nachman lived in Bavel, which is chutz la'aretz, which should have had Yom Tov Sheni d'Rabbanan. So how is it possible that he already was allowing them to have enough from the chametz on the last day of Pesach? So the Achronim speak about it, the Rishonim speak about it, but the most popular teretz is that it was in an area of Bavel that had high-speed internet access, and they were able to get the message very quickly when Yom Tov was. So they happened to not have had the Sveika D'Yoma because they were informed as to when Rosh Chodesh was very, very quickly. And this whole gzeira of adding a day is only for communities that didn't know on time for Yom Tov when Rosh Chodesh was. Okay, Zok Tehela Gemara Vayter.
1 second. So,
Omar
so Yosy, now that we know, we should have the same heter he had. We know when Rosh Chodesh is going to be.
That's a very good question. So it's possible that when they made the original gzeira of Yom Tov Sheni, it didn't apply to those communities. But once it applies to a community, our advanced communications doesn't change that. There could be from day one. From day one, they were connected. Otherwise, it's a very good question. Once you say that if you have communication, you don't have to stick to Yom Tov Sheni. So nowadays, there shouldn't be anything called Yom Tov Sheni.
Right.
So it must be that when it was originally established to Yom Tov Sheni, it didn't apply to these communities.
We'll get to Rav Shem and himself to Rosh Hashanah.
Oh. Okay. Zok Tehila Gemara. Amar Rav. Now that we've spoken about what you do with actual chametz that gets mixed in to other food items, now let's talk about the kelim. So Amar Rav said, Kederis by Pesach, you have to break. So what does this mean? It's pots that had chametz in them from the year, and you have to break them because there's no way to kasher them. So let's see what we're talking about. Dr. Rashi, Rav Lutame, Rav is sticking to his shita. The Amar Chometz, he holds these pots even after Pesach. Even after Pesach, they're going to be asher banot because they had chametz in them. Rabbi Yehuda, the isle b'mashu. He also must hold that even a mashu of chametz will be asher because in the pots, whatever is absorbed in the pots is probably a mashu. And we have another issue. Even if there's blias in this pot of Isser Anah, but those blias come after Pesach, those blias are old already. They're more than 24 hours old. And we know there's a concept called Moisen Tam of Gam. Once blias are old, even if they're going to give a taste into the food, but it's going to be a negative taste, it's going to be a bad taste, and that would not answer. So why b'chalal would there be a problem with these pots? Zakrashi v'chasavar noisin tam lifgam aser. He holds, even though the taste that these pots would inject into food that you cook in these pots is noisin tam lifgam, Rav holds a chumrah that noisin tam lifgam is aser, which we don't. Right? That's why the rabbi will always ask you, if you ask him a shaila, if you cooked fleishik in a milchik pot, he'll always ask you, when was the last time you used it for milchiks? Because the moment you haven't used it for 24 hours, it's already nice and tam lefkam, and therefore it wouldn't aser. So if you have a pot that you hadn't used for milchiks for more than 24 hours, even though it's a quote unquote milchik pot, if you cook fleishiks in it, the food will for sure be mutter, because any blias of milchiks that was in the pot were already 24 hours old by the time you cooked fleishiks in it, and any taste that milchiks might have put in to the fleishiks would be lefkam, would be a bad taste, and therefore we paskin that would be mutter. However, Rav is machmer and holds that noisim tam lefkam is also. And therefore, if we hold noisim tam lefkam is mutter, there's no reason to destroy these pots, because you can use them after Pesach, because even if they're going to put a tam into the food that you cook with it, it's only going to be tam lefkam, which should be mutter. So Dr. Rashi is less helchas kavase. We don't paskin like Rav in these chumras that he says. Mitrei time, there's two chumras that the Rav agrees to that we halacha l'maisa do not paskin on. Chada to uki rava helchas the taruva is lachas manai mutter krebshim. First of all, we hold that taruva's chometz after Pesach is mutter and ganzen, because we paskin like Reb Shimon that it's only a knas, and the knas does not apply to a taruvas. The high pachas mitaruvasu, and the belief that's in a pot is even less than taruvas. Taruvas is your actual chametz that got mixed in with other chametz. Here you have blias in a pot that's not even taruvas. So for sure, we wouldn't paskin like this chumrah. We would not require that those pots be broken. The kaim on nois and tam of gam mutter. We also hold that nois and tam of gam is mutter. Once the blias in these pots are old, hufok taimai bedoif nekli. So that's why Allah l'maisa we wouldn't require the breaking of these pots. Okay, gewaltig. Okay, so frag the Gemara on Rav. Why would you do that? Why would you break these pots or destroy these pots? Now I have to clarify a couple of things. If it's a metal pot you can kasher. We know that. We're talking about pots that are cheres. Pots that are cheres are boileya, but they're not poiled. So therefore, you can't just make hagola on them and get the blias out. The blias remain there. So you might ask, if cheres is boileya and not poiled, so then there shouldn't be a problem. Because even though there's blias of isser in the walls of the pot, why would that impact food that I cook in the pot if you say it's not poiled? The answer is, it is poiled. It's just not, you can't get all the blias out with hagola. So little by little, it leaches out from its blias into the food. And there's no way to cleanse them completely. A metal pot, if you make hagola on it, it will completely release all of the blias in it. And you don't have to worry about it leaching in to food that you'll cook in it later. But a cheres pot, there's no way to get all the blias out, but little by little, it's going to leach into the food, and that's why the cheres pot is a problem. So again, why don't you wait until after Pesach, and cook in the pot something other than what the original blias were from, and then it'll be bottle b'shishim. So tomorrow, Rav, who holds that min b'mina is not bottle, Rav is afraid that if we let you use this pot, you might not remember what this pot is restricted from using in it, and you might use even minoi, and then there's no bittul on that, and then it will be awesome. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Lo yishavu, don't break these pots. Aval mashahu la'achos manoi, wait until after Pesach. And you can use these pots completely. The as the Shmuel Temei, and Shmuel is going according to his time, and we already know Shmuel held that after Pesach, Chomich oil of a Pesach is not Osher B'Tarubis, like Reb Shimon said, and like we said in Reb Shimon, and therefore after Pesach there's no problem using these pots. To Amar Shmuel, Lahani de Mezav Nakandi, the people used to sell pots. Now there was a brisk being that Rav told people to break their pots after Pesach. That means after Pesach, people would go buy new pots. Unlike us, where we might buy new pots before Pesach, in those days they would run every year after Pesach to buy new pots. So therefore, people who were in the pot business, and I don't mean medical marijuana, they were in the pot business, meaning cheres pots, they would jack up their prices after Pesach when there was a very high demand. And he told these retailers of pots, Ashvuz akadnichi, keep your prices stable and don't jack them up because you know there's a higher demand. V'loy, and if you're going to jack up the price, darshinin l'chu Reb Shimon. I'm going to tell everybody that we pass like Reb Shimon, and you can reuse your pots. But according to Reb Shimon, where Chomich oil of a Pesach Hayidei Terubas is mutter, people don't even have to buy new pots. So you better go easy on your pots, otherwise I'm going to destroy your market. I'm going to destroy your demand. Frankly, Gemara, if that's in fact what Shmuel held, that you don't have to buy new pots, so why should he threaten them if you raise your prices? It's still causing Eden to spend money that they don't need to. Tell everybody, don't buy new pots. Dr. Gemara, Shmuel Reb Shimon Tzvile. Dr. Gemara, Asr de Rav Hava. This story happened in Rav's domain. Rav held you do need to buy new pots, and therefore Shmuel wouldn't diss Rav. However, if you're going to take advantage of the situation, then I'll tell everybody that they don't need new pots, and then your whole market will fall out under you. So therefore, charge stable prices and don't take advantage.
Yes, was this a chumrah of his, or is it the psak halacha? If it's a psak halacha, you can't.
Because Rav holds, unlike us, noisen tam of gam is osir, and Rav passes like Rabbi Yehuda that there's an isur lav on chomich over lava pesach.
So how can he say, I'll tell everybody that they don't have to buy new pots?
Because Shmuel passes like Reb Shimon, that chomich over lava pesach is not osir midaraisa. It's only a knas midarabanan, which does not apply to terubas.
All right. Okay.
He was only answering for Rav. That's right, because he was in Rav's domain. That's why he answered.
He was in Rav city, right?
Right.
So even in Rav city, where Rav mandated the buying of new pots, he said, even though this is Rav city mandates the buying of new pots, if you're going to take advantage, I'm going to shut you down. I think Shmuel told me a shaila. Oh boy. Okay, my speaker just died, so let me plug it in, because otherwise I don't have good sound. I believe Shmuel Irvin told me this. I heard it over from Rabbi Yaakov. When Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky Zatzal was in Muncie, there was a Yid in Muncie who opened up a new pharmacy. And he came to Rabbi Yaakov for a bracha that his pharmacy should be successful. So Rabbi Yaakov said, if you're going to charge fair prices, I'm going to tell everybody to use you, and I'm going to use you myself. But if you're going to take advantage of people and overcharge, then I'm going to tell everybody not to use you. So this is like similar to what Shmuel said. Shmuel said that if you're going to charge too much money for, then I'm not going to recommend you.
In Hungary, they forbade fish in the 1930s.
In Constantine or Pesach time, or what was it?
No, I forget if it was a whole year or only Pesach, but they put fish out of the menu for Shabbos because the fishermen just raised their prices for no good reason.
So they outlawed fish, and that taught them a lesson.
And they did the same thing with the shramlich or in Eretz Yisrael. The guys raised the prices in shramlich, so the Rebbe said, if you do that, I'm going to come to shul with my hat,
With my baseball hat, with my "Make America Great Again" hat. Uh-huh.
Does that include falsha fish? I didn't hear that.
That's what they did.
I
They
think
made
if
false
you're a
fish
falsha Hungarian,
These guys selling fish were probably selling false fish anyway. and jacking their prices up.
They weren't false Hungarians. They
But
were real
interesting enough, interesting enough, there was a story in Ponovich. There was a very interesting story in Ponovich where there was an almana who used to do the laundry for the boys. It was an almana who did the laundry for the boys, and one week this almana raised her prices, and the boys in Shiva decided that they're going to boycott her. And that week, nobody brought her laundry, and she didn't have any money for Shabbos. And she went crying to Reb Chatzkel Levenstein, who was the mashgiach. He was a very scary mashgiach of Panovich. And Reb Chatzkel said, those bochum that arranged this boycott have caused me a lot of pain. And those bochum, there were 4 or 5 of those bochum, did not live to Rosh Hashanah. Did not live to Rosh Hashanah. So boycotts, I guess, could only be put in place if the rabbi says you can't on your own be a vigilante justice guy. And these Talmidim died.
That's because these guys walk around yeshiva with dirty clothes. That's what caused them pain.
There was I don't know if I say this over, but in Philadelphia, one of the staff members got very upset about at a bacher for saying something offensive. This bacher would love to chepper a certain staff member. So once the staff member was very upset at this bacher, so the staff member said that he said over this story of Reb Chatzkel, then he told this bacher, I want you to know you made me very upset. So this bacher went running to Rosh Hashiva and said, so-and-so cursed me. So she said, don't worry about his curses. He'll be just fine. Okay. Zog the Hel Gemara weiter. Zog the Hel Gemara weiter. Let's see where we're holding. Hahuta Nura. Before we do that, I think I wanted to just peek into Tosis because there's some very important stuff over here. There's a whole big shiloh over here that we discussed as to what is halacha with min b'minoi. Rashi seems to learn that Rav is passing like Rav, that the Chala Torah Kula, min b'minoi is not bottle. Yet Tosha seems to say it's a chumrah by Pesach. The Rambam says that it's also only a chumrah by Pesach because Pesach is considered a dover sheyesh lo matirin. The halacha is when you have something that can become mutter anyway through a different process, then it's not going to be bottle b'roiv. So since anyway after Pesach, chametz will not be osir, therefore chametz is not bottle. So let's see what Tosha says over here. The Gemara challenged Rav. Why should you break your pots after Pesach? After Pesach, if you use it shaloi b'minan, it should be bottle. Teimalari, nehidus svir lon, the time of the chametz b'kteir choshev mashu she'ein regil l'shtamish haba b'yachad. I understand you consider that the blias, the food that's absorbed, the tastes that are absorbed in the wall of a pot might be tiny, and therefore, if you cooked in the pot, it shouldn't answer what you cooked in. But we have another problem. You're not allowed to be mevatel nisr lechatchila. So if you know that you have iser in the walls of this pot, yes, if you cook something in there by the eved, it will be mutter. But you're not allowed to lechatchila go cook there because ein mevatel nisr lechatchila. And Tosha says, "Vafilu yisur derabanan." You're not mevatel nisr lechatchila. So because of that, Tosha says, "Mafarish Rabbi Yosef hoyel ve'ika tarti l'tevusa." So he knows in tam of gam umashu shloi b'minoi b'chai gavim mevatel. So Rabbi Yosef says a huge chiddush that even though you say normally ein mevatel is lechatchila, but if you have two things here, you have one mitigating factor is that it's nois in tam lefkam because the blias are old, and it's also a mashu shaloi b'minoi. There we'll say mevatel is lechatchila. So that's a very important halacha. You're not allowed to bedavka mix an isser with heter, even though it will be bottled. But if you have a pot that's nois and tam of gam and it's a mashu, you might be, according to Rabbi Yosef, you lechatchila can cook in this pot. You can lechatchila cook in this pot. If you have a treif in a pot that's nois and tam of gam, you might be able to be lechatchila cook kosher food in it and not have to worry about it, according to this Teretz and Tosfos. He has another. He says Verima Farish that there's a big difference. The Kivin Shak Deris Hayucheres Hein Imu Asurin the Einlam Takana, Zechoshev V'diavad. The other svara is, this is not called Ein Mevatel Yisrael Lechatchila. Yes, sure, by cooking in the pot, you're being Mevatel Yisrael Lechatchila. But if you can't use the pot and you have to break the pot and you have a total loss on the pot, that's not called Mevatel Yisrael Lechatchila. That's already called B'diavad because you'll lose your pot if you're not able to use it. Okay, so let's see the Gemara weiter. Hahutanura. There was a tanner, the tachu ve'tichaya. Now we know that when you have parva milk, non-dairy coffee whitener, they usually have a sign in the by chasnas that this is non-dairy, right? Now I'm sorry. Now that is not relevant to this discussion at all. That is not relevant to the discussion, so I take that back. Hahutanura, the tachu ve'tichaya. There was an oven that someone smeared the walls of the oven with animal fat, clearly making the oven fleishiks. So also Rava bar Ahiloi lemichla lerifta. If you baked bread in that oven, so that bread becomes fleishiks. And Rava bar Ahiloi said you're not allowed to eat this bread at all. Afil b'milcha. This bread is fleishiks. You're not even allowed to eat this bread with parav la'olam forever. You never rash afil chazav husak. Meaning, even if after you smeared the wall of the oven with fat, you burnt it out, we say that there's going to be the time of the fleishiks remaining in the oven, and forever after, if you bake in this oven, the bread becomes fleishiks, and fleishik bread is not allowed ever, even to eat with parv.
What do you mean even with parv? You should say even with fleishiks, not even with parv.
Well, you're not allowed to eat it at all.
Okay.
You're not allowed, this bread is usher. Bread is usher.
This is a tanner that's made out of cheres.
Correct. And we're going to actually talk about that soon, but we'll assume it's cheres. So the halacha, and we know that you're not allowed to bake bread that's either milchiks or fleishiks, because it's assumed that bread is parv, and it's normal for people to eat the bread with milchiks and fleishiks, and that's why the bread must be kept parv. And when they do bake milchik bread, they have to make sure that it's very clear that the bread is milchiks. Or it has to look different, otherwise there's a concern. There's a shaila in the Rishonim, does this only apply to bread, or does it apply to other things that people assume are parv? There was a process where they would put milk into wine because it gave the wine clarity. And there was a shaila if that would be allowed to be done because it makes the wine milchiks, but at least you could use the wine for a milchik suda. And there was a shaila if you'd be allowed to do that because of the same problem. Things that are assumed to be parv, you're not allowed to make them milchiks or fleishiks. So Meisei Frank the Gemara. You're telling me.
Also, I actually heard that it applies also to danishes. If you notice, that cheese danish is the only one that has that shape with the folded corners. The same idea.
I heard that as well, but I wasn't 100% sure, so I didn't want to say it. So thank you for bringing that up. The cheese Danish in all kosher bakeries are made in a different shape. Then you'll never have cheese rolled up like a kokos. You never have that. It's always folded up like a hamantash or stickle because it has to be very distinctly different so that we should know that it's milchiks. And that's why when they serve it in the bags, because the brown bags are COVID proof. And if you have some Filipino who scratched his head and blow his nose, and if he put it in the bag, then you're safe from COVID. That's why it says on the back, geez, I should know that it's not parv. Zog the Hela Gemara. Meisve, you're telling me that once you burn out the oven, it doesn't help, and the oven remains fleishiks. But we learned, Ein loshin esa isa b'chalav. You're not allowed to knead a dough with milk. In other words, you're not allowed to make a milchik dough. Vim losh, and if you did, kol hapas kula asura, the whole bread is going to be asur mipnei hergal avera, because we're afraid someone's going to assume it's parv and will eat it with fleishiks. Kayotzebay. Similarly, ein tachin es hatanir ba'alya. You're not allowed to smear the walls of the oven with fat from a tail. The point is that it's fleishiks. Vimtosh kola pas kula asura. Then any bread that you're going to bake in this oven will be asur. Ad sheyasik es hatanir, until you heat up the tanner again, so you sort of kasher it. Hahuzagat tanner miyashari. Yet you see that if you do heat up the oven and burn it out, it takes away the fleishiks from the oven, and it would be mutter. Rava Bar Eloi says la'olam, even if you heat up the oven, you could never get rid of that fat. Zakta Gemara to Yufta, to Rava Bar Eloi to Yufta. Rava Bar Eloi is upgeschlagen, and in fact, if you burn out the oven, it would be allowed. Now, I think the Tosh at the bottom of Amud Aleph. Yeah, Tosh asks a very, very important kasha. The halacha is dogim. If I had a filet sugar plate, if you have a filet sugar plate, and you take hot fish, which are parov, and you put it on that filet sugar plate, so it will definitely boilea, it'll absorb some filet sugar blias from that plate. So the halach is dogim that was on a ka'ira of fleishiks, mutter lochlam b'kutach, you're allowed to eat those fish with milchiks. It means even though the fish absorbed a taste of fleishiks, you're allowed to eat it with milchiks. And the reason for it is the famous saying of nat bar nat, which means nois and tam, bar nois and tam. The fish don't have any fleishiks in them. They've just absorbed the taste of the fleishiks. Now, when you eat this fish together with milchiks, that milchiks will not come in contact with fleishiks. It'll come into contact with the tam of the fleishiks that went into the fish. So it's nois and tam, bar nois and tam. It's a second level of nesinas tam, because the tam of the fleishiks first had to go into the fish. Well, first it went into the plate, then it went into the fish, and then you want to outlaw it to eat it with milchiks. That will not be a problem.
Isn't that the same idea? Isn't that the same idea of flesh of equipment or dairy equipment?
Correct. At worst, it's going to be not by not. At worst. So the problem here is, why is there a problem with using this bread that was baked in a fleishig oven? Why is there a problem eating that with milchiks? At worst case scenario, it's not by not, because it didn't actually come into contact with fat. It was by atam of the fat. And now when you eat it with milchiks, it's only again a nois and tam. So if dogim sha'olu b'kaira mutter lachlan b'kutach, bread that I baked in this fleishig oven should also be equally mutter.
There's a difference between baking and fish that's just lying on a plate. The fish wasn't being baked in the plate.
Right. So that's a very good svara, and Tosfos, I believe, touches on that svara. So let's see what Tosfos says. Yesh lemer the Gomer hasam nami tznoin shechat obesachin ashlach l'bedach. Here's Rashi, which mechorved it's nine balat fei midogim. The Gemara talks about if you had a radish that you cut with a knife that had belias of fleishiks, you're also not allowed to eat. You're not allowed to eat. There's usher. Why is that? So this is where Rashi says it's nine balat fei midogim roishchin shalu b'kaira. Just putting hot fish on the plate is belay a little bit, but the radish, which is sharp, will be belay a lot more from the knife. So Tosfos says, just like Chaim Tzvi said, if you extend it to our case, dogim shenisbashlu b'kaira, if you cooked the dogim in a pot that had fleishiks in it, that might be also lachlan b'kudach de bishul bali yoser midai. It's possible that just putting the fish on the plate, there it won't be belay so much. But by cooking it in a pot, there it would be worse. It's possible that the bread will be belay more fleishiks from a tanner that you bake it in than if you just put it on a plate. Right? That's what you said, Chaim Tzvi. Right? Ulupirushai acher. There's another pirush that he said, Shapir Shakur Sham, that Snoin Aser. There's another pshat over there why that Snoin was Aser, is because Shashamnun is Kurish al Sakin. There was actually be'en fat on the Sakin. So that's why when you cut the radish, it's not per nat. The radish is actually absorbing real fat. Then in Nikar Vikab, it's 9 tam basar mamish. Kasha hachal, here it will be shver. Kivush and Iskanach atana yofa. If the tanner is cleaned out, or if you heated it up again, why would Rava Bar Eloi outlaw you from using it if you burnt out the tanner where there's for sure no be'en? Why isn't it not by not? So Tosfos answers, maybe you can say that once you smear fat on cheres, there's no way you can get it off completely, and therefore it's worse than not by not, because there's always some be'en there, there's always some residue of fat left on it. Okay, so let's see the Gemara right there. So we slugged up Rabbi Bar Eloi, and we said that burning out the oven would help. The Rabbi Bar Eloi. Amal Ravinu Rav Ashi. The Chimei Acher the Toys of Rabbi Bar Eloi. Now that we've eliminated Rava Bar Eloi, and we say that once you burn out the oven, you could bake parava bread in this oven. Amaika Omar Rav Kederes Pesach Yishavu. Why did Rav say that you have to break those teres on after Pesach because they have Isra on that? Why don't you just burn them out and then you can use them? It should be no different than the bread. Amar Lei, there's a very big difference. Hasam Taner Shal Matchis, the type of tanner that we just brought a raya from, that you can heat up and get out all the blias, that's referring to a metal oven. A metal oven you can kasher, but the type of pots that Rav were talking about that you must break, and therefore cheres you cannot kasher. So that really changes everything. Because then if Rabbi Variloi was speaking about an oven of cheres, it would have also been mutter. But the Gemara has others for us. They're both speaking about cheres. But the difference is, an oven is designed to heat it up from the inside, which makes it subject to a much higher level of heat. And therefore, you'll be able to kasher it the same way it became osir, by heating it up on the inside, and therefore you'll be able to get the blias out. But the pot has taken me bechutz. No one puts coals inside a pot. You put the pot on top of a fire, which means the walls of the pot are never subject to such a high intensity heat. So kasher the pot by putting coals inside it. So tomorrow no one's going to want to do that. People will not kasher it properly because they're afraid if they put such heat inside the pot, it'll break the pot. And therefore Rashi tells us, if you're going to tell people that we'll only let you use the pot if you heat it up on the inside, people will be afraid to do that. They'll afraid it'll break their pots, and they'll just heat it up on the outside, and they'll tell themselves that it's good enough, and in fact it's not. So basically, the Gemara is making a difference between a fragile item that you cannot heat it up to the level that it would need it to be heated up to, and therefore we outlaw it completely, versus items that people know are more robust, that can handle the heat. Those things will let you kasher.
Why was Rava Bar Eloi shlogged up? Was he not able to say the same svara that one I'm talking about a taner shel cheres and you're talking about a taner shel matchis?
The way I'm understanding it is that's the comeback. Rava Bar Eloi, I believe the Gemara is now retroactively forever Rava Bar Eloi. That's how I understood it.
Even though it says tiyufta, like that's a tiyufta.
Unless they knew what type of oven that they were talking about there. But I don't know.
I never heard of it.
It's a yufta that the Gemara comes and makes a comeback afterwards. But it seems like it's a good aura. But it seems like that it's in Svara, these are good terutzim to Rava Bar Eloi. So Hi Buchya. Hi Buchya. Buchya, Rashi says, is some type of a frying pan. It's some type of frying pan. That's something that normally gets heated on the outside, but osir, it will be osir. However, the malya gumri shapridami. If you filled it up with coals, it will be mutter. So this buchya it wasn't a frying pan; it was actually a ring. It's like a fire ring. Imagine if you're on a skillet and you want to fry an egg. They that I saw used today. They just put a ring on the skillet, and when they pour the egg in, the ring contains the egg from spreading, so it makes it like a round egg. It acts like a frying pan. So that was a robust type of vessel, and they were able to subject it to the high heat, and therefore the ring, they said in Mali Gurma Shapardami, unlike a pot where we don't allow it because we're afraid you won't do it. Amar Ravina Ravashi, Hani Sakini, these knives, the Pischa, the knives for Pesach, Hechi Avdin and Lu, how do you kasher them? Because they have handles and they have blades. Amar Lei, so Ravashi says, what's the problem? Lididi Chadidakavdinan. I buy new knives for Pesach. Amr Lei, so Ravina told Ravashi, Teina Chamar de Evshalei. Can I know Ravashi? You're a Gvir, you can afford to buy new knives for Pesach. The Loy Evshalei. What about the 99%? You're a 1%er. What about the 99% who can't afford to buy those new knives? I don't mean I buy new knives. It means I renew my knives. I restore them to brand new condition, to mint condition. And what do? I want to be able to put the blades into fire, but the wooden handle will get ruined. So therefore, katayu betina, I smear a mud around the handle to protect them from the heat when I put the blade into the fire. Uparjalaya benura, and I put the steel part of the blade right into a fire. And then I still have to kasher the handles. And then I make hagala on the handles. The hilchasa, even the blade you can just dip into roishkin. And Rashi says, or Tosha speaks out, that of course, if the knife is used in direct fire, you might have to make libun. Knives that aren't used in direct fire, you don't have to make libun, but there's also a svar that says that since most of the time you use the knife not in a fire, it's enough to make hagala and not libun. Uva klirishin, of course, you have to put it into a klirishin, meaning when you make hagala, you have to dip your kalim into a pot that's currently on the fire. That's the klirishin, and if anyone, we didn't have it this year, but normally we have the beautiful hagalas kalim that Shol and Shimon Stern arrange. So those hagala, there's a pot on the fire, literally, when you put the kalim in. Amar Vunda B'Rei B'Shua, Eitz Par Magile B'Roishkin. What is an eitz par? It's some type of stirring stick, I think the ArtScroll says. What does the ArtScroll say? Eitz par, it's a wooden mixing spoon. Oh, right. In Hungarian, we say
it's a ladle. Yeah.
They call it a fuckanol, right? That's a mixing spoon, right? Everybody knows what a fuckanol is. It's a mixing spoon. So eitz par magila for Polish aren't allowed to say that word. Only Hungarians are allowed to say that word. Any Polish who understands English can't talk about wooden spoons. Zoktimor eitz par. Really, it's what a wooden spoon is made for. It's made to hit the kids if you misbehave, right? If you misbehaved, you got pitched with the fuckanol. That's how it works. So eitz par, if you have a wooden spoon, magila b'roish, when you make a gala with a chlushan. The same way it was boileya through hot water, you'll be able to kasher it the same way. There was cheres kalim that had a coating of either lead or it might be glass, according to one sheet in Rashi. Can you use them on Pesach? Because the thought is that the coating will not allow the cheres inside the coating to absorb any blias at all, and therefore, let's say that these kalim are not boileya, similar to glass kalim, and you should be able to use them on Pesach. So Eureka, if it's a green type of cheres, loite boilach levade asiri, and Raj's green cheres is so porous, it's so absorbed, it absorbs so much that it will be able to absorb blias even through the glazing that was over it. Since it's such absorptive qualities, it will be able to be belay. Anyway, that's for sure is also. The white or the black type of cheres, which don't absorb so much, maybe the fact that they're glazed will protect them, that they will not be belay anything. If there's grooves in it, which once again, if there's cracks in the glazing, surely it will be bailea. Like the bailach the vade asiri, ki the bailach the she, it's perfectly smooth. Does the glazing protect the cheres from being bailea anything? The midaisi. I see that when people have liquids in these type of kalim, even though the liquid's on the inside, you see seepage. You see that from the outside of the keli, there's moisture. Clearly, the moisture is getting absorbed into the walls and being let out the outside of the walls. So clearly, this glaze is porous enough, and it's allowing blias to enter. Almabali, you see that they're belaya, the Torah heida al klicheres in the. And once we see that this klicheres is being belaya something, we know that you cannot get the blias out of a klicheres. And where is the Torah made? Because the Torah says that with metal kalim, you can kasher. The Torah doesn't say that you could kasher cheres kalim. So there we know that even though cheres is berleya, we could never get all the blias out just by making a gala. Umay shna lini yain nesach tadarish meremar mani dekunya bein uchma bein chayure bein yirai kashari. Why is it that by yain nesach, if you use yain nesach in one of these kalim, we don't say these kalim are usher? And we don't say that there's a problem with blias. Yet on Pesach, you're saying there is. And if you're going to tell me because yain nesach, and it probably means stam yain, is only midrabanan, but chametz is deraisa, so they're more machmer. Zok Gemara, that's not a good teretz, because called the tikkun rabbanon came deraisa tikkun. When they made an isur rabbanon, they give it all the rules of an isur deraisa. So if it's by leah for chametz, it should also be a problem for yain nesach. He answers that the main difference is chametz, you'll cook in it. So there it will be by leah. But yain nesach is always cold, we're not worried about blias. Amar Rebbe bar Abba, Amar Abchia bar Ashi, Amar Shmuel, Kol HaKelim Shenishtamshu Ben Chometz B'Tzainin. If you only use chometz in a keli with cold, Nishtamish Ben Matzah, you're allowed to use matzah in them because they were not Beleya, Chutz Ben Beis Sa'ar, except for a container that you normally make Sa'ar in, because Sa'ar is very, very powerful chometz. Hoyel Shechimutzei Kasha. It's very powerful chometz, and that will be nivla even though it's cold. Amar Vashu Veis Charoises Kveis Sa'ar. Veis Charoises, Rashi tells us, is a kli that you put vinegar into, and you mixed into the vinegar. You mixed flour. It was like a condiment dish, and such a dish is considered like a beisar shechamut kasha dummy, and therefore we say it is also by leah. Amar Rebbe Hani Agni de Mechuza. These big they're big vessels in Mechuza. Hoyel v'tedir l'meilish b'chamira. Since people would need actual chametz in sa'arin umashu b'chamira, and they actually let it sit there. They store this sa'ar, this yeast, in these plates. Kivei sa'ar shechamutze kashadami. We consider it like a base sa'ar, and even though they're cold, we say they're berleya, and you're not allowed to use them on Pesach. Pshitat pashit. You might think since these were very wide open platters, there's a lot of air, and even though they're containing very heavy chametz, very powerful chametz, maybe the air makes it that it shouldn't be nibla into the walls of these platters. Kamash malon, that if it's chemutze kasha, even though it's cold, we say that the blias will aser. And I guess we could stop here.
Good.
This glazed cheres is like our porcelain now, right?
I believe so. It's similar to our person that has glazing on it. Yeah.
Yasha koyach.
Shkoyach. Have a wonderful day.
Sure.
We're getting to the real Bishmak Pesach Gemaras.
Nobody here, any